Hey there, Michelle. What's shaking?
Not too much, Lindsay. How are you?
Well, I am happy to be back on the mic, but I have a question for you today.
Yes. What's your question?
So, Michelle, do you have good posture, would you say? How's your posture?
A very, very loud no to that answer. I
Oh,
terrible posture. I would say that's one of my biggest insecurities actually is my posture. I have a hard time wanting to I have a hard time like opening up and keeping my
interesting.
shoulders back. I also cross my legs when I'm standing. I guess Lindsay, these are things you don't know about me.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess I don't know. When I think about, I mean, we've been in the same physical space a few
Yeah.
times, and when I think about it, I guess I understand what you're saying. So this is interesting, right? So each of us have a different orientation towards posture,
Yeah.
and different ideas about it, and whether we should be doing it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super
What about
interesting, Michelle.
you? Do you
I
have
would
good
say
posture?
I would say somewhere in between. I don't think I have bad posture from what I
Mhm.
understand. You should correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I have great posture. You know how sometimes you
Uh-huh.
meet someone and you could just tell they just came from yoga class and they're in yoga like 10
Yeah.
hours a day because they're just naturally
So,
very,
yes.
it's like the perfect structure. I do not do that either. So somewhere in between. Yeah.
So, it's actually funny. I have this memory in my head of once when I was at sleepaway camp when I was a kid, and I remember there were these benches that everyone would sit on, and they didn't have any backs, and I always had very good posture, and I remember I would look around, and I remember seeing all the other kids kind of hunched over, and I started to hunch over, and so I
Interesting. There
actually
was a
have that as a
moment.
yes, I have that as a memory, so I don't know if that was really what made my posture bad,
That
but
is
I really
fascinating.
remember that key moment.
That is
It's weird.
fascinating. Kids
Yeah.
do definitely tend to hunch. I've noticed that kids will hunch because they don't know, they don't, they haven't been told to whatever. But it's really interesting to go back to the moment when something started in life.
Yes.
I wonder if our listeners have
Yes.
any reflections there for any bodily habit,
Yes.
anything you tend to do, like when did it start? Wow.
Yes. It's very
Interesting.
true.
Okay, well, today we're getting into posture, and
Yep.
we're going to ask our listeners to hit follow on All Ears English
Yes.
because we go into all different topics on the show. But our main goal is, yes, to help you speak better English, but most importantly, to help you connect at work, in
Right.
life, in your community, when you travel abroad, when you move abroad. That's what we're
Yep.
about, connection, not perfection. So hit follow, guys.
Definitely. All right. So this question comes to us from YouTube. This is from Kevin Emation 5508. And it's a very good question. Lindsay, would you like to read it?
Sure. Okay. Kevin says, Hi, Lindsay, Michelle, Jessica, and Aubrey. As always, you guys make an amazing podcast. I love hearing that. I have one question. I recently noticed that there's a difference on my English speaking when I sit versus when I stand up. While
Mm.
standing up, for some reason, I feel that my English is so much better. I also
Mm.
feel more confident with my English. Do you think posture can affect our speaking? Thanks again for the podcast. I
Yeah.
love this question, Michelle.
So do I. I took this one right away. I was very excited about it. Really, this listener, Kevin, is very self aware and
Yes.
really thinking about more than just the words of English. Kevin is thinking about so much, including the posture. So I very impressed with this question.
100%. And I 1,000% think that Kevin is right. I
Hmm.
well, I mean, it's all our own personal experience. So there's no right or wrong necessarily, right? But
Hmm.
I've had the same experience not speaking English, right? Because I feel pretty confident about my English as a native speaker. But
Hmm.
when I
Yeah.
speak Spanish or just when I am at a party and if I'm feeling a little less confident in a given moment, if I can expand my space, I feel a
Mm.
neurotransmitter different, like a neurochemical difference in my brain.
Mm.
There's a
What? So,
physical, like, it's like
yeah.
hormone. I'm not a doctor. Don't quote me on this, but I know that when I expand my space, when I move, when I like take up more space, I just feel
Yeah.
more confident. I feel better.
Yeah, I think that's interesting how you're putting it about expanding your space. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about it, I don't do a lot of yoga, but when I have done it, it's a lot of trying to elongate yourself and
Yeah.
breathe so that you are using all this space. And so I suppose in that sense, it's this idea of being bigger, being taking up more room, maybe gives you that confidence, gives you that peace.
Well, that's part of it for sure, and then there's also the breathing. So you're not
Hmm.
constricting your breathing by caving in
True.
on your
Mm.
chest. You're giving your body a direct line just to breathe more easily. I just came off of a weekend meditation retreat actually here
Mm.
in Denver,
Oh, great.
where it was about a day and a half of full, Friday evening, all day Saturday of meditation, walking meditation, sitting
Wow.
meditation, back
Oh,
and
wow.
forth all day. And I came
Wow.
out of there feeling quite centered. I don't know if confidence is the right word in this case of meditation, right? But centered. And that is essentially confidence in a way. So the
Right.
breathing, the sitting up straight all day, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think posture can change the way we interact.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure about the language speaking in general. However, I could see how that would help maybe also clear your head a little bit,
totally.
and just give you be more centered, like Lindsay said. But in general, I mean, I do find that when I stand up or at least sit up straight, it does help me focus. Can think more clearly, so there's definitely something to it.
Well, and here's the other thing. Let's say it's it doesn't mean it's gonna mean you're gonna conjugate that verb correctly when you're
Right.
sitting up
It's not
straight
a
and
magic
and, and
trick.
incorrectly when you're hunching over. But here's the thing, you might be less likely to notice your mistakes because you're already in a loop of
Mm,
thinking in a positive direction. You're then focusing on that eye contact with that person. You're not
right.
caving in. You're not self-protecting. If you think about evolutionary times, right? People protecting their organs, right? It is kind of like
Mm,
hunching over and sort of protecting yourself. You're not doing that anymore. So now you're maybe less likely to notice those mistakes and you're focusing on the human
mm.
connection, the person in front of you, right?
That's a very deep thought, Lindsay. That's very interesting. Yeah. So, guys, but we thought this would be a great time to talk about some of the vocabulary also associated with posture and speaking. So, to me, I think maybe this listener is asking about standing and sitting. I think standing is great, but I think it's more about your back and shoulders. You can be standing up and still slouching and not really taking up that space. It's still probably a little better than sitting, but I think it's more, to me, I think it's more about the back and the shoulders and opening up your chest. What do you think?
Well, yeah. And I think this is a practical tip because we don't always have the choice to just stand up,
Right.
right? I mean, let's say you're in a
Right now, we're
business
not
meeting,
standing.
right? I'm not going
Yeah.
to stand up if I'm feeling less confident. Let's say we're in a boardroom meeting. We can't just stand up because you want to feel more confident. It's just not an option. So instead, imagine the equivalent of standing up is straightening your spine.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love that. So good. What else,
Okay.
Michelle?
Okay, so let's get into some vocab here. So the first one is projection. Lindsay, what is projection when we talk about projecting our
This
voice?
is all about your voice. It's kind of good posture for your voice in a way,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It means you're using your voice to be heard. You're projecting out, right? Not being quiet. You're not talking down or into your lips, right? You're not mumbling
Hmm.
or muffling your voice. You're projecting it. And when you do have that better posture, your voice will project out. So that way we're speaking more from our belly than our throat.
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Exactly. And so, guys, I sing, and I've done vocal training in the past, and there is a lot about breathing more from your belly, and not always just having your voice come completely out of your throat. You have to
Mhm.
have it really with your whole body. So again, this
Mm.
doesn't mean projecting doesn't mean screaming. It's just getting, really being on your voice. As I remember, that's how one of my teachers used to put it, to be on your voice. And this to me, I think, is easier with better posture. So yeah.
Yeah, this is something I wanna work on too. I mean, I'm not a singer, but I wanna work more on just everyday speaking. Like, when I go to a conference, honestly,
Hmm.
if I do a lot of speaking and socializing, by the end of the day, I've lost my voice, and I think that's a bad
Mm,
sign. It means I'm speaking too much from my chest, not enough from, like, my stomach and my gut, I'm guessing. Is that a bad
interesting.
sign?
Well, it's okay. I think we all get a little tired, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I think definitely speaking, using proper breathing and not so much just from your throat. I do think that's, I'm not a voice teacher, but in my the knowledge that I do have, it would be better to breathe, more from, let the breath and all of the sound come from deeper in your body.
From deeper in your body. I love it. And that's just a little more influential too. That way your voice drops down a little bit. People can hear you
Mhm.
more. It becomes more powerful, I think.
Mhm.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
that people have trained on this too, like
Right.
CEOs and people that make big
Oh,
speeches.
yeah.
Well, there was the weird case of, Elizabeth Holmes, the one she spoke in like a very deep
Yes.
voice. I think she got
Yes.
trained on that. I'm pretty sure. I'm not
Really?
100% sure, but I
Oh,
think
interesting.
so. Yeah. So watch the movie. What is the name of that movie? Michelle,
Ooh.
I think, is it The Dropout? Is that what it's called? The Dropout's the story of the company she founded. Check it out. Super interesting. Super
Yes,
interesting. Yeah.
definitely. So you might hear someone say something like, "Try your speech again, but this time focus on your projection a little more."
Nice. Yes. So this is something a speech coach might say to you, right? But you can
Mhm,
say this
mhm.
to yourselves, guys, as you're getting up to make that presentation. Because I think as we get nervous, our voice does probably go up into our throat, right?
Yes.
And we're breathing quick breaths, and we're just not doing it correctly. So
Yeah.
trying to slow down everything and use the parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. Yeah,
Oh,
to calm us
very
down.
scientific here today. So the next one, speaking about breath, the other thing you might talk about is breath support. So this is having that strength, really similar to the idea of projection. Or if you have good breath support, you're probably able to project a little bit better.
Mhm.
So I used to do these exercises in theater where we would hold our breath and let it out slowly. We would kind of almost pretend we were a balloon, right? And then we would let it out like I remember doing that.
Totally.
And
Yes. Yes.
yes, so working on your breath support, expanding it, I think that is definitely going to be easier when your posture is better. Maybe if you're standing up, I know, it would always be okay, everyone, let's stand up, and there is a reason for that.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
definitely a reason for that. You can't always stand, but usually for some sort of performance or anything or speech, you are, and there's a reason for that.
For sure. Yeah. In terms of the deep breathing, just my teacher on Saturday was saying, if you're feeling nervous, then breathe in, but have your out breath be longer. And that does
Yeah.
activate like I said, the parasympathetic nervous system or the cues to calm down. If
Yeah.
your in breath is longer than your out breath, your body triggers the sympathetic nervous system, which says, run, something's coming.
Mm.
Right, let's get nervous, let's get that spike of
Let's get nervous.
cortisol.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can actually tell our body how to act based on our breathing. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you could say something like, I find that my breath support exercises have helped a ton for nerves during speeches.
Yeah, and this might be a conversation you might have with other English learners, other colleagues, or native speakers, right?
Hmm.
And then body language. This
Yeah.
is more than just how we stand, but it is how we stand, where our
Yes.
arms are sitting, our eye contact, a lot of things.
Yes. Yep.
Mhm.
Her body language made her seem very closed off to feedback.
Yeah, it really does matter to be aware. And this can be very cultural too, right? This can be different across cultures, what it means. We have to observe a
Yeah.
lot.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yes.
All right, Michelle. So slouch would be another one. Let's just do maybe one more of these. And
Okay,
then,
well, these are just, if you could say, if somebody isn't standing up straight, you could say they're slouching or they're hunched over. Maybe their shoulders
okay.
are hunched, but it's that idea of not being, standing up straight completely and kind of closing in. I remember, on that note of protecting your organs, I remember my teacher would call it, you're being a heart hugger. It's like you're protecting your heart almost. You're
Yeah,
not
it's really
opening your heart.
interesting.
Yeah.
Right, right, right. But I think that mind follows body sometimes. So
Mhm.
if we, if we tell our mind to relax by expanding our body, there's nothing to be worried about and protective about. The mind will follow.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Interesting. Should we do a role play, Michelle? Little role play?
Let's get to it. So here we are, friends practicing for a presentation.
Oh, I love that idea. Okay.
Okay.
So that's good. But let's go over body language.
Okay.
Well, you're slouching a bit.
Oh, you're right. I tend to hunch.
I think it gets in the way of your breast support.
Right. And in turn, my projection.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll try again.
Now, this is a really good point. I'm glad we put this into the context of a presentation for our listeners because a lot of
Mhm.
our listeners are at that point where they're ready to give that business presentation in English. They've been
Mhm.
working on the English, but don't forget about the physical presentation.
Yep, yep. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, absolutely. That's really you can be talking about anything. You could be talking about the most interesting thing in the world, but if you're not really connecting with your body as well, it's just something isn't going to work. You really have to think about that a lot.
it's so true. It's so true. There's so yeah, there's so breathing I think is the core tip today. I feel like that's the most important thing because I think everything else could follow the breath. Good posture
Yes.
could follow the breath. Breathing, speaking correctly could follow the breath. So, Michelle, is there another episode that we should check out here?
Yes, we have episode 2287 was how to speak English like an American.
All right, go check that one out.
Mhm.
And Michelle, what's our takeaway on posture and the physical aspects of speaking?
Well, we haven't gone over the role play yet.
Oh, shoot, I forgot. You're right. Good
um,
call.
so here we go. Just to go back a second, guys. So Lindsay said, okay, so that's good, but let's go over body language. So that's kind
Yes.
of that umbrella term that goes, over everything, including how you're standing.
Yes, and then I said, "You're slouching a bit." So you said, "Okay, so what am I doing wrong?" And I said, "You're slouching a bit," meaning
Hmm.
you're kind of it's kind of the same as hunched over, right?
Yeah.
You're just not standing up straight,
Right. Right.
slouching. Yeah.
So then I said, oh, you're right. I tend to hunch. So I'm acknowledging this is a pattern.
Yes. Yes. And then I said, "I think it gets in the way of your breast support."
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I said, right. And in turn, my projection.
Yes. Okay. So you were aware of it, right? And you're going to correct it. And I also just think paying attention to where are we giving this presentation in what country and what are the
Mhm.
physical cultural cues. That's kind of
Yes.
another level of like a cultural competence level. It's not a physical well-being level, but
Yeah,
that would also be interesting to look at, you know?
definitely.
For example,
Absolutely.
yeah, like for example, in the US, it's kind of rude to point at someone, right?
Right.
We don't really point, we try to avoid it. That may or may not be true in England. I don't know, or Australia,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So another day,
definitely.
Michelle. There's so much more to cover.
So much more, guys. Yeah, but I think the takeaway is that this is something that we all need to focus on. I think this I just love this question because we're not only thinking about the words that we're using, the grammar, we're thinking about how our bodies can help us connect to the language and how we interact with others. I know, just from singing and doing theater and things like that, how important breath support is and how important it is to focus on your body. And I know from my own natural stance as a bit of a sloucher, I know that once I do stand up straight, I always feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So, guys, definitely try and focus on your posture when you're speaking. I think it can help.
Yeah, and be inspired by the fact that posture could bridge the gap. If you're making
Hmm.
mistakes, it's not everything, right? People may not notice those mistakes if you
Yeah.
can approach with an air of
Yeah.
confidence and connection and you can bridge that gap. It doesn't matter if you're making those mistakes. It matters what the outcome of that moment is, right?
Right. Yep, for
Yes.
sure.
I
Well,
love it.
this was a great question. Thank you again to Kevin. And guys, yeah, I bet our listeners are are sitting listening to this
Standing up
episode
now,
now.
hopefully.
Yeah, everyone's kind of this. I bet we're all standing up
Yeah.
perfectly straight or whatever it is now that we've drawn your attention to it. So,
That's so funny. I love that. That's such good stuff. All right, guys, hit the follow button if you love All Ears English. We have a good time over here. All right, Michelle, talk to you soon.
all right, bye.
Bye.